What is going on, YouTube? What is going on, Kansas City? And what is going on, everybody? And welcome to the Beat of KC. My name is Lucas Murphy, and if you can't tell, I have two absolutely phenomenal guests that I enjoy bringing on. Typically, we talk Chiefs, but today we're going to be talking about, and I'm going to say it, the border war, because it's back, ladies and gentlemen. Luckily, we have two Jayhawks and one Mizzou fan, and really what we're going to do is just kind of talk about this football game, the significance of it, and kind of just provide you some insight on really what we can anticipate from this phenomenal football game. I think it's just super hyped up for the fans, for the people who've been through this since they were kids like myself. So without further ado, Josh, Michael, welcome to the Beat of KC.
Let's go. I'm excited.
Man, yeah, this is great. I mean, like you
Awesome.
said, Lucas, we're usually on here to talk Chiefs, but man, this has been a long time coming. The border war is back, and I appreciate you calling it what it is. It's the border war. I know they've tried to do this whole thing where they changed the name.
Border Showdown.
Yeah,
All right.
what is that?
Yeah, insane. I mean, yeah, at least it's not the Farmageddon, but that's
Yeah.
neither here or there. So Josh, I want to kick it off with you first off, because I really think it's significant. I think the most important thing to talk about right out the gate is injuries. And I think too, obviously, I think we both teams really kind of prepared for this game. Obviously, Missouri played Central Arkansas. KU obviously played Wagner. So they were really kind of prep games, I feel like, to really come into this game.
Yeah.
But obviously, you guys sustained some injuries. Can you kind of just briefly talk about the Sam Horn injury, and then your kicker's injury?
Yeah, so the Sam Horn one, we'll talk about that one first. So I know Drinkwitz cracked that up to be a quarterback battle between Bo Pribula and Sam Horn coming into the season. I think most Mizzou fans that follow the team closely knew that Bo Pribula was a starter, but that was a little bit of gamesmanship by Drinkwitz, just not wanting to reveal who his starter is, have KU, the real opponents on the schedule, prepare for both guys. And I also think that was just Drinkwitz kind of giving Sam Horn the opportunity because he's been at Mizzou for quite a while now and has stuck it out, and he wanted to give him a chance. But I think everyone kind of knew Bo Pribula was this team starter, so it doesn't hurt them so much in that sense, but you just hate to see it for Sam Horn because, again, he's a kid who's kind of stuck it out. And I mean, I wanted to see what he could do, to be honest, because he's thrown like less than 10 passes in his Missouri career, and you just wanted to see it from him at some point. We thought we were going to see it against Central Arkansas. We didn't. It's a morale. It's a kick in the morale for sure, more than anything. But Bo Pribula was this team starter. Now, as far as the kicker, and I actually think that's the bigger injury because Blake Craig was a weapon for this team. Kicker is a position that Mizzou has really prioritized since Drinkwitz has been here. You saw it with Harrison Mevis, what he was able to do. Blake Craig was a highly touted kicker coming out of high school. You guys saw, if you caught the Central Arkansas game, I don't know if you did, Michael, but I know Lucas was watching because we were texting about it. But I mean, the guy can boot from 50, 60 yards out. And I mean, it really hurts to lose a guy that essentially you were in his range as soon as you crossed midfield.
For sure.
Well, that, and like even in college football, like having a guy that could make a 50-yard field goal, like that's a huge advantage to have because, I mean, I start to worry when they're out like 45 yards.
Yeah.
Well, I think that, that obviously Sam got drafted to the major leagues. So I think, that's going to impact. I'd be curious how that impacts his drafts. Obviously, he got drafted, and I think he was going to intentionally sign. So I'm curious how that's going to impact that. But, yeah, Michael, so my question to you is obviously...
He actually did sign, not to cut you off, but he actually did end up signing with the Dodgers.
Dodgers, yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. So, Michael, my question to you is obviously we're dealing with some injuries on the defense, and really kind of we've been sustaining some things that I feel like obviously we have the depth on the defense, but Bengali Kamara obviously sustained an injury, it sounds like, in practice. We've yet to see Sip, one of our linebackers. Keys, one of our defensive tackles, hasn't played. Do you think that those injuries with those types of leaders, it's going to impact the defense playing against a team like Missouri?
Absolutely. And another thing that we haven't really talked, like Kamara is one of those dudes that like he was going to the league. Like he was that good. He had the athleticism. And so to lose that guy, it's going to hurt. And I think that what's unique about these two teams playing so early on in the season is that, Missouri beat up on, Central Arkansas, and we beat up on, Fresno State. And then I can't even remember the Wagner.
School of the Blind.
I
FCS
mean,
school.
it just doesn't really matter. Like, both teams handled their business against inferior opponents. This is going to be the litmus test. Like, we're going to know a lot about both of these teams depending on who wins and what this game looks like. And that's why it's like kind of hard to put a lot of stock into what both of these teams did in their previous games, because you should look like that against talent that really doesn't deserve to be up here. So I'm going to be watching the defense and how they play against Missouri. Missouri's offense was great last year, and you lost guys like Weiss, and then you lost obviously Burden in the draft as well, and then no more Cook. But it almost seems like KU's in a better position than Mizzou at quarterback. And the only reason I say that is because Jalen Daniels has been in Kansas. I mean, Bo Prabula got there, 6 months ago? He's a transfer from Penn State. And so experience matters in college football. And even though we've seen high highs with Jalen Daniels, we've also seen low lows. So maybe experience will play a factor in this game. And if it does, I actually think Kansas has the advantage.
For sure. Now my next question obviously goes to you, Josh, and how I'm going to kind of approach this, and I'm going to turn to you, Josh, first, and I'm going to go to Michael. But obviously we want to highlight and identify areas where we're a positive. And I think Michael really kind of hit on that with Jalen Daniels, but provide some positivity, like what really is going to make Missouri's offense flow? Like, what is Missouri's offense all about? Like, what's going to make them score a lot of points, and what really is going to drive their offense?
That's a great question, because I think a lot of Missouri fans are still trying to figure that out. The talent is obviously there. I mean, everywhere. The talent is there on the offensive line. The talent is there at running back. The talent is there at wide receiver. But if you were to ask me like one thing that Missouri can really build off of in this game to make the offense go, I think it's going to be the RPO game with Bo Prabula and then running back Ahmad Hardy, because both of them are extremely dangerous runners. And I said before the season, I have no idea what Prabula is going to look like as a thrower, but I find it hard to believe you can't run a functioning offense around him just because of the pure ability to run. And we've seen that a lot in college football. Like, there's a lot of teams that have running quarterbacks that aren't great throwers of the football. They're able to run a coherent offense with them. Now, I think Bo Prabula showed in the first game that he's a very capable thrower as well, but mainly it's going to be that RPO game I'm looking at, because Mizzou has the talent at receiver. I mean, even though they lost Theo Weiss and Luther Burden, as Michael mentioned, I actually think this wide receiver room overall might be better, because I think the names that they're replacing at receiver are bigger than the actual production they brought last year. Luther Burden had a very down year. Now, Theo Weiss had a great year. And I attribute that, honestly, in my opinion, to quarterback play. Brady Cook, I think he held the offense back, to be quite honest. I know a lot of Mizzou fans love him. I think Bo Prabula unlocks a lot more, but that could be another conversation. But, I mean, you look at Kevin Coleman, their starting wide receiver, transferred in from Mississippi State. He's from St. Louis. He was a 5-star wide receiver in the same high school class as Luther Burden. Decided to come home this year. He was all SEC last year. And then you have Marquise Johnson, who I know Kansas has some athletes on the defensive side of the ball, but I don't know who's going to cover Marquise Johnson on their team, because the dude just dusts everyone, and he's good for at least a couple deep balls a game. Doesn't mean that Bo Prabula is going to hit him accurately on every single one, but he's going to get loose on a few. And the question is, can you limit the damage with him? But back to the RPO game point that I was trying to make, I think that's where Mizzou's really going to lean, because Bo Prabula is a great runner of the football, and then Ahmad Hardy was a guy that a lot of people were predicting to lead the SEC in rushing this year. Came in from ULM after running for 1,300 yards as a true freshman. And we saw him in the first game against Central Arkansas. Granted, weak competition, but he had a perfect 10 carries for 100 yards and 1 touchdown. Very pretty stat line. He was efficient. He was explosive. And I look at the Kansas linebacker room, especially with the loss of Kamara, and I say, man, hand the rock to Ahmad Hardy and try to expose that weakness.
For sure. Now, Michael, obviously, we talked about Jalen Daniels. Let's kind of pick another area that's going to really make this offense flow and be positive. What are you going to highlight? What are you going to focus on from this offense?
I like our wide receiver room a lot. I mean, the Alabama transfer in Henderson, he looks really good. Cam Pickett, man. Like, I did not expect to see, again, granted it was against inferior opponents, but I didn't expect to see that type of production from him. I'm going to say Daniel Highshaw is going to have a big impact in this game, because one thing that Kansas did a lot last year was run the football, and they didn't run the football with Devin Neal. That's when the Kansas season really actually got good, is when our old OC, who's now with Wisconsin, actually decided to use one of the best running backs in the conference, and that's kind of when we saw Kansas turn their season around. Now, it was too little too late, but I think that Daniel Highshaw is someone that another year under this offense, he could be one of the X factors in this game.
For sure. I'm really kind of focusing on that running back room. Like Sean Williams, obviously transferring in from Iowa. I think it can be another two-headed monster in that backfield. And that running back room is super deep. They got a lot of experience in there with some obviously younger talent. But I'll be curious too. My kind of thing too to go with Josh is I'm curious to see how KU runs at RPO. They run a lot of options, and I think too that's going to be a significant thing.
Can I go on a rant just really quickly?
Yeah, go ahead.
I cannot stand the option, not even the option, the designed runs with Jalen Daniels. And it's not because he can't do it. He's actually pretty good with the ball in his hands. I do not understand the thought process of a guy that is coming off of a back issue that basically sidelined him for most of an entire season. He also has had shoulder injuries in his career. The guy with the back issues you're having on designed quarterback runs in the first 2 weeks of the season against guys that are going to be selling insurance in 2 weeks. Like, I do not understand. Listen, football players have to play football. I understand that. But it almost seems like our offensive coordinator, and I actually really like Zabrowski. I think that he's been really good. But I just don't understand the want and desire to have Jalen Daniels risk his life and take some big hits for 5 yards in a meaningless week 2 game.
For sure. Yeah, and that's one thing that I really hit on in my video recently was I get why they're doing it, and I think at times too he's kind of taking it into his own hands. I mean, that's what really the option design is about. You got to read the defensive end, and then you got to play it off of that. And I do think some of those plays are designed for him to run, which I do agree. Like you don't want to put your starting quarterback at risk, especially when he's had a back injury, for sure. So I agree with you 100%. I don't think that rant was unwarranted by any means, for sure. Now, Josh, we're going to flip over to the other side of the football. Obviously, we talked about maybe some potential, offensive power coming at this defense. What really highlights this Missouri defense? What's going to make them maybe shut down this Kansas offense?
Man, I love the defensive side of the football for the Missouri Tigers. It's really the side of the ball that's carried them over the past few years. I mean, Missouri, I think the big names on the Missouri Tigers over the past couple of years have been the Brady Cooks, the Luther Burdens, the Theo Weises, but it's been Mizzou's defense really that I think has been the catalyst to this last 2 to 3 year run. And I Drinkwitz said all spring and all summer, like, this is the most talented team that he's had. And it's mainly because of the defense. Because you look at the defensive line, they brought in Damon Wilson, the transfer from Georgia. He was the best edge available in the portal. He had 2 sacks in week 1 against Central Arkansas. Very good chance that he could enter the NFL draft with a strong year, already off to a strong start. And then Darius Smith, he also came in from Georgia. He came in 2 years ago, though, actually, but tore his ACL last season, so we weren't able to see him. But he's one of those guys that is kind of your pass rush specialist. He's more on the slimmer side, but man, he is an athlete. He's twitchy. He can move. That's what you can expect with a guy from Georgia. Zion Young, he was a leader for this defense last year. He returns. Chris McClellan, the defensive tackle. Like, the defensive line is very strong for Mizzou. The pass rush is very strong. And I actually think the linebackers are even better because they returned Tristan Newson, who was their leading tackler on the defense last year. And he actually ran out of eligibility, but because of the lawsuit brought on to the NCAA by Diego Pavia, the Vanderbilt quarterback, and the ruling that came from that, he was allowed to return. So Mizzou got a starting linebacker back that they weren't originally going to have. And then you have Khalil Jacobs, Nicholas Rodriguez, who Drinkwitz praised in spring football. He's getting a lot of playing time. But then the guy that I think really has a chance to be, he was a freshman All-American last year at West Virginia. You guys may know him. Josiah Trotter, son of Philadelphia Eagles legend Jeremiah Trotter.
Yep.
He led the team in tackles against Central Arkansas. And you just watch him and you're like, yeah, this guy's probably going to be in the NFL in 2 years, because he just looks shot out of a cannon. And if I'm Kansas personally, like I'm game planning to get the ball to whoever is not near Josiah Trotter.
For sure. Now, flipping it over to you, Michael. Obviously, we kind of talked about some of those injuries on the defense, but I still think it's got the stoutness. I think that there is some toughness to this defense. I think we've really kind of built an attitude on that side of the football, and I think the depth. So, what is some positivities about this defense that could potentially really hinder the Missouri Tigers?
I really like our defensive line. Now, I know the linebacking core is a little bit injured right now. I think the front four's ability to get to the quarterback, I really like that. And I think that, that's a big theme in all forms of football. Can you get to the quarterback? And I think that this year, a couple of years ago, we had Austin Booker. He got drafted by the Bears. And then last year was a little bit of a down year. Justice Finkley Jr., the transfer, I believe, is he he was the Texas transfer. This is a guy that, is a captain on this defense now. So I really like our front four and our defensive line. The cornerback room is a little bit, I'm going to be watching that because, we lost Kobe Bryant. We lost Mello Dotson. I want to see what our DBs look like against an SEC team. And I think, like I said, this is something that we're going to learn a lot about both teams based on how this game goes. And I really kind of, I want to talk more about the storylines of this game. But Lucas, I want to ask you, what are you going to be watching on the defense?
For sure. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna be. It's like we've talked before. Mine obviously is the defensive front. And I think if you're applying pressure with guys like Leroy Harris and those types of guys, obviously our D tackles I feel are very very strong.
Yeah.
Obviously, Pribula likes to run the football, and that's what he was brought in to do. Being able to contain, and I think that's going to be something that I'm curious to see how we can do that really with this defensive front. They're very, very athletic. They can move. But yeah, my favorite player on this defense is Lyric Rawls coming in from Oklahoma State, safety. He literally reminds me he would be the epitome and fit into this Seahawks Legion of Boom. He's that type of player. And so I'm excited to see kind of how he matches up and who he's really going to headhunt because that's just his mentality is whose head am I going to pop off this game?
And he had that crazy pick against
Yeah.
Wagner. I don't know how he caught that ball.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm excited to really see that. But yeah, I'm a defensive guy, and I think that KU finally has a product. It felt like last year, even though we had Dotson and Bryant, we played a lot of off ball and we kind of gave up a lot, bigger chunk plays. This one, I feel like we have more ability to kind of press. We're kind of in the pockets of our wide receivers that we're facing. Now, granted, we did play a little bit better of an opponent in Fresno State. Obviously, Wagner was just a tune-up game, but it's nice to see these guys, and obviously the Dye brothers, Jermaine Dye's kids are playing for the Jayhawks, and they've really had some good opportunities to play. So, it's an all-around focus. If I'm just being honest, if I'm gonna solidify down to one thing, it would be that defensive front. But I'm really focusing on kind of the big picture of what this defense is gonna be, because I do think in the end, I think this is gonna be a very high-scoring game. I think both offenses are going to be putting up points. And so with that being said, obviously I don't want to go forever. I feel like we could talk forever about this. And
Yeah.
my final thing is give me final predictions. What's the score going to be, Josh?
I'm going to say Missouri scores 40 points, Kansas scores 21. That's going to be your final score. And the reason I say that, I'll give my reasoning behind it, is because I just think this Missouri defense is elite. And with Kansas coming in for a road game, I mean, you're already kind of at a disadvantage just because we know this rivalry. I think when you're the road team, that's when the offense starts slow a lot of the times. And with Missouri in their defense, I just think there's way too much talent on that side of the ball for them to allow anything more than 21 points. And I just think this is one of those games where it's going to be close for most of the first half, I think, because it is a rivalry game and nerves are going to be high for both teams. But I think in the end, Missouri's talent will eventually win out, and the sheer depth that they have on the defensive side of the ball, because I think they really are too deep at just about every position on defense. Once they lean on that, that's what's going to kind of carry them in the second half.
For sure. Michael, what's your score?
So I have to be unbiased. I'm going to be unbiased. I'm going to say 35-28 Mizzou wins. But I'll say this. Because this is something that I've been saying this all week. This game means more for Missouri. Missouri has to win this football game because if they don't, they're in a lose-lose situation. If you lose to Kansas, how could you lose to Kansas? If Kansas wins, you weren't expected to win. You went on the road in Columbia and upset an SEC team. Like, I think this arguably is the most important game of Lance Leipold's career. If he goes in there and shocks the world, which I absolutely think they can do, again, it's a program-changing win, and it's also great for the rivalry. But I do think that with Mizzou being at home, you guys are at home for whatever the reason, like the first 6 weeks of the season.
Like the first 6 weeks,
But you guys being at home, that is a huge advantage. I think it's going to be close. But, man, I'll tell you what, the position that Missouri's in right now, I do not envy. Because, again, if you win, you were supposed to win. If you lose, that's one of those losses that's going to sting for a long time.
For sure.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. Sorry, I know, Lucas, you're probably going to give your prediction, but I just want to follow up with what Michael said by saying, like, yeah, I think Kansas, you're kind of playing with house money because I think even you guys would probably say that Missouri has more overall talent, so therefore they're supposed to win the game. But that's the exact kind of situation. I think if you're Kansas, that's kind of what you want, right? Like you want to be the underdog. You want to come in here, pull off the upset. And like Michael said, that's kind of a position for Mizzou where it could be a lose-lose because you're supposed to beat Kansas. You lose to Kansas. That's embarrassing. You're not supposed to lose to Kansas. Not in football. Basketball, different story.
And it's the inverse for Kansas basketball, you know?
Yeah.
You don't lose. But, man, that'd be a great way to repay that favor for what happened in December.
Heck yeah. I honestly, I'm going to go 38-28, and I got KU winning. I do think that going into Columbia, I call it the jungle. I do think that's going to be the biggest challenge. I think from my perspective, though, this is probably the most prepared KU is going to be for this. They got a ton of, I would call them veteran leaders on this team, people who have kind of gone into environments similar to what Columbia might be able to provide. You know, like we went on the road when Jalen Daniels was first, taking over the helm and we beat Texas, right? And so that happened. We've gone into environments like Morgantown, and granted, it came down to a final drive, Kobe Bryant with a pick six to win the football game. And so we've kind of gone through those types of environments. Now, I don't think anybody on this team will ever experience this. Will be obviously their first time, but truly experience what this rivalry really means. And I think it's being hyped up. When you got guys like Jim Rome who are on a more national stage now and been on a national stage now, but are very closely tied to, the KC Metro sports, what's going on. When he's interviewing Lance Leipold and is really just hitting on those points of how important this rivalry is and just kind of hyping it up. I think that the message is being sent to both teams. And I think it's just going to be an exciting football game no matter what happens. Although I do believe KU is going to go in and send a message for sure. But
Well,
obviously
really
we got to wrap
quickly,
this up. Go ahead.
I was just going to say really quickly, I think there's 2 games on their schedule that are incredibly important. I think it's Mizzou and K-State. And I think they're going to win one of those 2 games. I think it's going to be K-State, but I almost think the K-State game doesn't mean more, but since that game is at home, I mean, you kind of need to send a message to K-State because like first season in the new stadium, you got to win that game. But yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and that's, bringing up K-State. K-State went into Missouri and kind of gave them a problem. So wasn't that a few years ago when the kicker you were just talking about, he hit like a 50-yard bomb or something?
Yeah, it was 2023. It was, I think it was either 55 or 60 yards. And it's kind of funny because, I know you're trying to wrap it up. It's kind of funny, though, because that game, so Missouri was 5 yards closer, then got a delay of game penalty that pushed it back. And everyone thought, okay, well, they just lost because now he's not going to make it. Still made it. And what never gets talked about, because K-State fans still cry about it, is that there was a penalty on K-State on that field goal for having too many men on the field. So even if he had missed it, he would have gotten a second try 5 yards closer.
Right.
K-State fans are whiners? What a shock.
Hey, we got to make another video about that, but
oh yeah.
Well, I'll be asking you guys about that when we go over to my channel. So if you guys, not to plug my own stuff, but
Oh, you're good.
we'll
That's where
definitely be
we're
talking
at
about
now.
that.
So obviously we're gonna wrap this video up. Before we head out, we like to do it every time just to make sure everybody knows where to find everybody. Josh, I'm gonna start with you. Where can people find your content?
You can find me here on YouTube. Show Me Football is the channel name. You can also check out my work on showmefootball.com and follow the Twitter at showme.
Jayhawk fans, get over there and send some messages. I keep getting on a lot of my social media the tiger that's really giving the business to the Jayhawk, and I'm getting tired of seeing that picture. So let's get over to Josh's channel and put some KU stuff all over it. So Darcy, where can they find you?
You guys can find me on YouTube at KC Sports Report, and you can also listen to me on The Zone on Sports Radio 810 from 10 to 2.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate both of you coming on. You guys know how I wrap up every single video. Muck Vazoo. Have a good day.